So we're just going to finish off now looking at the RDP and Windows Logon while protecting that with Duo. And we're going to take a look at offline access, which was introduced from Windows Logon 4.0.0, that's version. And it basically gives us a way to allow secure logon still using the two-factor authentication method on that Windows system even when the device is offline. So when we say offline, essentially what we mean is that there's network connectivity issues somewhere, whether that's on the system itself or somewhere in the network, that prevents the application installed, the Duo application installed on the machine, from reaching Duo's cloud service. And there may be times where that happens, where there's network issues or there's an outage. However, there's a critical system that has two-factor authentication enabled, and we still need to get access to this system. So this is what offline access allows us to do, whether that's via Windows Logon locally or via RDP. There is some requirements that's stated in the document, and you can have a look at these in a little bit more detail. But for those that watched part 1, when we look at disabling some features, we actually did that in part 1. So we disabled essentially the fail open mode, and we need to make sure that is done before we can actually make use of offline access, because if we don't and fail open is on, it'll just bypass the second factor authentication with Duo should the application not be able to reach the Duo cloud. So if you have enabled that and you are watching this video, you can change it in the registry. So there's a helpful link here. If you navigate the documentation, you can change that setting there. There's another one where we need to make sure that we disable only prompt for Duo authentication when logging in via RDP, and this means again we can change this in the registry as well. So we want to make sure that we are protecting both the Windows Logon and RDP sessions as well. There's some considerations for devices. So for this to work, there's specific secondary authentication devices supported. So we've got the Duo Mobile for Android or iOS, versions 3.22 or later. There's no support for Windows Phone. You can use the supported U2F key, Ubico brands, you've got Google Titan, and there's a few others on there as well. There is some limitations that are also listed as well. You can only register one authenticator for offline access, so it's not possible to register a backup device for approving offline logons. So essentially, once you've registered the device that you're going to be using for offline access, you can't go ahead and add another one as well. U2F security keys for offline authentication only work for local system logons, so it's not going to work for RDP client to perform that offline access. And then remembered devices. So we took a look at remembered devices in a previous video for this specific application, and this does not apply to offline access, and that's because of the authentication flow and how it works as well. So offline access configuration, again, Duo's documentation is really cool, step-by-step instructions, which we're going to essentially walk through and have a look how it all works now. So we've got a couple of steps here that we need to do in order to enable offline access. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So we just go across to my dashboard. And what I'm going to actually do, just because of the supported devices, and in the previous videos I was using the virtual Android device, I'm going to go ahead and add a new user. So if we just add a new user now, and I'll call this one Kelvin. This user is also being created on the local Windows machine, and I'll just give it an email. Active, and then if we just save that, we now also have our new user Kelvin. Nothing active yet, so what I'll do is I'll just quickly send an enrollment email out to that user. That code's now being sent, and we'll pick back up on that after. But what we need to do now is, if we just go to the application that we were looking at, which is the Microsoft RDP, and we click on that, and then on the once you're actually on this, if you just scroll to the bottom of the application, and we now select offline access settings, the little radio button to enable offline login and enrollment, we now get some additional options that we can configure. So the first one is to limit access by groups. So if you wanted to only allow specific groups, i.e. say administrators of those systems, to be able to access those devices offline, then you would create a group and essentially add this group to this application. For our demonstration, we're not going to do that. Now, in the next one, we can prevent offline login after so many offline logins, or so many days. Now, what this means is that once these numeric values have been reached, the device will have to reconnect to the internet and establish that communication with Duo Cloud before it can go back offline and these settings to take place again. So it pretty much says it there. These counts reset each time the application connects to the internet. So if you wanted to, I don't know, say for instance you knew that maybe a device would go offline for maintenance reasons every so often, you know, you could maybe allow offline logins for X amount of times before it needs to be, or before it's expected to be back online. So we'll just leave the default at 10. And then lastly, offline authentication methods. We're not using security keys, so we can untick that. But if you was using security keys, then you know, leave that on. We're just going to be using the Duo mobile passcode. So once that's done, we just go ahead and save that. And now the application has been modified. So there shouldn't be anything else there that we need to do. So what I'll do now is I'll just enroll the new user that I've just created, and then we can finish off the rest of the offline access. Now if we just want to refresh this now, we should now have a device registered against Kelvin. There you go, you can see we've got that registered now. So if we just bring up the virtual machine now and we log into this device now with Kelvin, we should now be prompted for the two-factor authentication as we are there. So I'll just confirm that on my device. And now what we can see is the option to enroll for offline login. So if we wanted to activate that now, we activate now, or you can enroll later. So we'll just go to activate now. And now what we'll do is we'll open Duo on my device. So I'll just add this device in now. Click add, use QR code, and then if I just select that QR code, there you can see that I can now specify a name, or it'll give me a default name. I'll just press save, and now what we can see is the passcodes for the offline mode. So I'll enter the offline mode code now. And we'll activate that. And now that should be all activated. Just log in again now. I'll accept the authentication request, and as you can see, we can log in now. We shouldn't be prompted with the option to enroll for offline mode now. So we're just at that login, and then what I'll do is I'll log back out, and I will disconnect this machine from the network. Hopefully see how offline mode functions. So once we've logged in, what I'll do now is I'll just log back out with this user. Let's just sign out now. Let's sign out, and what we can also do is on the admin panel, we can also check the reports, so that we can see there that we've been granted access there. Now what we're going to see is when we go through offline mode, we should see a difference in these logs here. So I'll just bring back up that machine there, and what I'll do is I'll actually disconnect the network. Let's just quickly disconnect that. So now we can see that we've got no network connection there. So I'll just go ahead and I'll attempt to sign in again as normal. And now you can see that for the two-factor authentication with Duo, we can see that the computer is telling us that we're not connected to the internet, and therefore we have to enter the offline code. And you can see, based on the settings that we set in the admin panel, you can see that we've got 10 offline login attempts or times that we can log in remaining before we have to make sure that this computer's connected to the internet. So what we'll do is we will enter the code now that I've got on my device. So I'll just put that in there, 697, and then we'll press login, and as you can see, we're now being given access to this device. So we still completed two-factor authentication in offline mode, and theoretically we should have 9 attempts left where we can actually use the offline codes to log into the device. So while that's logging in, if we go back to the authentication logs and we just refresh that, we're not going to see anything different here, and the reason being is because that device has no connectivity. So the little application that we have on that device has no way to communicate with Duo's cloud. However, once we give access back to this computer, we should see the authentication logs populate as well. So if we can see there that we've logged in, we don't have any connectivity there. Now if I just edit those settings again to re-enable that connectivity to the internet, that should now be on, which is good. I'll just log out again. And now we log back in with the user. being back online, and we should get the normal dual authentication prompt. So I'll just accept that on my phone, and there you go. You can see that we can log back in now using the usual two-factor authentication mechanism. So now if I log back in and we access the dual admin portal, what we can see now is we've used the offline dual mobile passcode, so we can see that that has come through now. That log is now visible, and this is the most recent log where we just logged in as usual. So we can see that we've used the offline dual mobile passcode there as well. So we still get full visibility of everything, which is great. Obviously, when the device is offline, the logs are not sent until the device is back online. That makes sense. And we still are able to enforce two-factor authentication for users or critical groups that need access to specific devices when network access may not be available. And that's all there is to it. Thank you for watching.